Well, I mean, I think we've all kind of mentioned the new normal, that when this is all said and done, whenever that will be, it won't be back to business as normal. Um, Steve, what role do you see LNG playing, trying to help countries recover from the economic ramifications of COVID-19? What role will LNG play in Africa post-COVID?
I guess we're talking about two different aspects. One is producing country and one is potential demand country, really. In terms of the producing countries, for a while, they're not going to see a great amount of revenue coming back from LNG, certainly not for the rest of this year, because prices in Europe and also prices in the Far East are going to remain pretty suppressed for a while. The ability to generate higher pricing and higher revenues is largely going to depend on consuming the planned oversupply, which we expect it to be gobbled up sometime next year anyway. But then it'll come down to what shape of recovery do we all have? When are we back on the same trajectory we were on before? So instead of the market tightening sometime in 2021, as was the expectation, perhaps the tightening doesn't occur until late winter 21 or sometime in 2022. And so we see the producing countries starting to benefit probably a bit later than they had hoped to. On the demand side, it comes down to whether or not countries can and choose to use LNG or domestic gas instead of other alternatives for producing electricity and for fueling industry.
What is the major deficit on the continent? Electricity. What is a cheaper source of fuel that today we could equate to be available on the continent of Africa, be it way west in Senegal, Mauritania, mid Nigeria, Equatorial Guinea, go down Mozambique and Tanzania. So if you think about the application that can be put to play, both LNG and domestic gas has got to work in tandem, but African states as sovereign nations must see this as the African Union commitment that we want to make a difference, and that is the only way the continent of Africa could ever be part of that fourth industrial revolution.
And I think there's a disconnect with the sovereign and the private sector.
That's it. That's it.
In terms of this, and I think they're not talking to each other.
Yeah, you see, look, just again, let's go back to South Africa. South Africa's power problems has been known from as far back as 2003, if I can remember correctly. It's insane. How long did it take them to build the pipeline from Mozambique? But no one's talking. Each time they keep talking about, let's build nuclear, let's build this. It's insane. Why do we keep chasing our tails instead of getting results? Let me tell you what's missing, as Younger said. Private sector and public sector needs to work hand in hand.
Business will have to reinvent itself to survive in the next new norm. And I think also business in Africa has to be perceived in the same fashion. And I think investors looking at Africa would also want to wear the same sort of outfit as you look at opportunities. What's the quality assets that are out there? What are the management team? What are the sort of structures you're using, be it technology or software, to optimize the operation, to make it an efficient, sustainable system or business opportunity? So I think that some things will not change in terms of how investors look at opportunities. You're looking at bottom line at the end of the day. Yeah. And of course, you pay particular attention to the regulatory environment. Is it easier for me to do business in X or in Y? Which comes down to, again, to what are the sovereigns doing to encourage qualitative investment to complement some of the opportunities. We'll look for resilient assets. Basically, these are ones that have no or limited exposure to the COVID impact. So you look for businesses that have sort of optimized the structure with technology, because basically the winners in this sort of new normal will be software, business services. So you look at business that basically utilize this sort of components to optimize their operations.
None of us knows exactly when is the end of COVID-19 in terms of material impact. I think we're all hoping that we just had this one major wave, and even if there's a resurgence, it's not so bad, and then our economies can get back on our feet. but we don't know for sure. So it feels like it's going to be a bit of a whipsaw 2020. And until we get either a vaccine or a treatment or some answers, we're not really sure where the market is headed. So in the meantime, I think the key is to just keep plugging away at the projects we have, at the trade relationships we have, being very, very cautious about credit, being very cautious about new trading relationships, but kind of keep the world ticking over, as it were, until we have a little bit more visibility. And then longer term, we will get back to some form of normal, and we will see investment in the continent, I think, expand quite dramatically.
And I think that, as Steve said, it's very difficult to have a clear sight in terms of what the end game would look like. But I think in lieu of that, I think one would just have to keep, coming up a couple of scenario planning and stress testing about the business model, and also instituting a sort of liquidity discipline on every sort of portfolio investment, and always doing what I'd call a typical bottom-up review of business, and while anticipating that there will be some kind of a treatment.
Post-pandemic, Africa will face a very trying time. The OECD countries are struggling, so you can imagine the level where Africa will find itself. But this opportunity is a test in seeing African leadership at play, in trying to make a difference, utilizing that source base of our natural resources and the very youthful population on the continent, and reversing that into an advantage for the continent.